Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Peter Pulos. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man in his mid to late 40s who looks slightly younger than his age, with blue eyes, brown hair, displaying only a hint of gray and no recession, slightly mischievous with a sideways smile, prone to sarcasm, wearing a suit, white shirt and jacket. I'm a clinical associate professor of radiology and gastroenterology at Stanford University School of Medicine. I'm also the founder and co-chair of the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Inclusion, and Equity, or Smatty, and co-planner of today's conference. I'm also a C3, C4 incomplete quadriplegic. Welcome to our third annual conference on disability in healthcare and medicine, hosted by Smatty and the Stanford Medical Students with Disability and Chronic Illness, MSDCI. To our international registrants from Spanish-speaking countries, bienvenidos. To our French friends, bienvenue. To our friends from Portugal, bem-vindo. Shwagat hai to our Indian friends, Kush Amdin, to our friends in Pakistan, Akwaba to the watchers from Ghana, Epeleo to the Nigerians, Shpagadom to our Bangladeshi colleagues, and Alan Wasalan to our Arabic speakers. And lastly, but not least, to our friends in Ukraine, we're thinking of you, Laskavo Prosimo and Slava Ukraini. We also wish that Orthodox Easter brings a sliver of peace to your country. And to our Jewish friends, Chag Sameach, Happy Passover. I would also like to recognize that Stanford sits on the ancestral lands of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people. Consistent with our values of community and inclusion, we have a responsibility to acknowledge, honor, and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. We are so grateful to you, our audience, for joining us on this Saturday morning, and I know that you will enjoy our sessions, dynamic speakers, panelists, and moderators, the interactivity of the chat, and the chance for discussion and socializing. To those of you who have disabilities or are disabled, the disability community, previous attendees, members of Smatty, allies, and newcomers alike, this day is for you. We will now begin our welcome messages from Stanford Medicine leadership. I'm proud to introduce our first speaker, the executive sponsor of Smatty, Chief Supply Chain Officer and Vice President of Stanford Medicine, Amanda Chala. She joined us in September 2021 and has quickly become a crucial addition to our team and a strong ally of people with disabilities. Amanda has over 20 years as an influential leader across supply chain and hospital operations in prominent healthcare organizations. As the Chief Supply Chain Officer across Stanford Medicine, Amanda is responsible for over $1 billion of non-labor spend. And as a trusted thought leader, she has been featured in publications across the country, across the industry. Amanda was recognized in 2021 as the Contracting Professional of the Year by the Journal of Healthcare Contracting. Amanda, I pass it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Pulos. Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to our third annual Stanford Conference on Disability in Healthcare and Medicine. Thank you for joining us in this important and relevant discussion. Again, my name is Amanda Chala, and I serve as the executive sponsor of Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Inclusion, and Equity. I am so excited to be here with you and to lean in. We have all heard the astounding statistics of 60+ million people living with disability, essentially 1 in 4. And let's take a recent statistic published by the US Department of Labor in 2021 that indicates 19% of persons with a disability are employed. It is a fact that persons with disability are much less likely to be employed than those with no disability. This is a systemic issue. We must create a culture an environment, and a system where we promote, honor diversity, including those with disabilities. When I was offered the opportunity to join and support as a champion and as a sponsor, I leaned in. And while I do not have a disability, my family has experienced the challenges, pain, and biases that come with a disability. My husband, who studied heavily and worked in a career in tax, accounting, finance, was diagnosed with carpal and cubital tunnel 10 years ago. After numerous surgeries and nights of severe pain, where he had to keep his arms straight, his fingers constantly tingling, he finally had to give up on his career as he could no longer perform the work. You would never know it. He's healthy overall, 6'2" and relatively fit. Our family and our friends struggled to understand that this was a disability. It was an invisible disability. And disability is not a silent word that we should hide. It is a part of all of our systems and social justice intersections. We all know of someone or ourselves face an intellectual, physical, psychological, learning, or behavioral or other type of disability. We must advocate and bring the conversations forward. We talk about health equity and our patients. Our patients have disability. And when we embrace, create, and empower a culture of inclusion, diversity, and health equity, we build a culture of openness, empowerment, understanding, and respect. There's much work ahead of us to create that inclusive and diverse environment. And it's not because it's the politically correct thing to do or the right thing to do, but it is the smart thing to do. We have proven results, the value of a heterogeneous workforce, from morale improvements to productivity. Disability inclusion is about creating an inclusive workplace where people feel comfortable, valued, seen, and appreciated for what they bring to the table. We must bring forward the value and importance of diversity and inclusion by shifting the paradigm where disability inclusion is where we create a workplace where people are valued, appreciated, recognized for their strengths and talents. We must show a commitment to accessibility and compassion and bring conversation to the forefront and openly discuss the uncomfortable conversations, the challenges, and the needs. So, with that, let's build and empower a society and a workforce that includes diversity of thought and people, each allowing to bring their strengths and experiences and contribute to the care of people. Healthcare is a healing business. We are in the industry of caring for people, our patients, our community, and one another. And with this, I would like to thank Dr. Peter Pulos, Lizzie Zodak, and Dr. Ken Sotha, and the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability Inclusion Planning Committee, our speakers, and the team who made this important event possible. And thank you to you for being here today and taking the valuable time out of your schedules to join us on this important conversation. And with that, now I would like to play a welcome video from our three leaders of Stanford Medicine. You will hear from the Dean of the School of Medicine, Dr. Lloyd Monner, the President and CEO of Stanford Healthcare, David Entwistle, and the President and CEO of Stanford Children's Health, Paul King. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to the third annual conference on disability in healthcare and medicine. I'm Dr. Lloyd Monner, Dean of the Stanford School of Medicine. I want to express my gratitude to Peter Pulos and Ken Sotha for their fantastic leadership of the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability Inclusion and Equity. And I also want to thank Lizzie Zodak, the co-president of Medical Students with Disability and Chronic Illness, for co-chairing the conference. Thanks to you and the many others involved in planning this important event. Your advocacy for people with disabilities exemplifies the highest ideals of Stanford Medicine and the passion and dedication of those gathered here today. Together, you've been instrumental not only in fostering a more diverse and supportive environment here at Stanford, but in ensuring that our mission of improving human health through patient care, research, and education is broadly inclusive and sensitive to everyone's different needs. Thank you for being here and for all that you do for this community and our patients. Just as with other facets of advancing health equity, this important work starts at home. I'm proud of the progress the Alliance has helped Stanford Medicine achieve over the past few years. To that end, we will soon conduct a needs assessment to help us foster a more inclusive learning environment for our trainees with disabilities. I'm delighted that Dr. Lisa Meeks, a nationally recognized expert in medical education, has agreed to facilitate this effort. I also want to acknowledge the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on the health and daily life of people with disabilities. The transition to working remotely was an added strain for some, and I'm proud of what our community has done to ensure equity and inclusion in these challenging times. The Stanford Medicine Accessible Technology Group, for instance, is providing technology-based resources to address challenges people have faced during the rise of remote and hybrid work. As we strive to improve access to care, to resources, and to opportunities for people with disabilities, we know there is much more work ahead. And this work benefits everyone. It enables insightful, compassionate care, breakthroughs in clinical research, and an environment where all people can reach their full potential. Diversity and health equity are central to our goals at Stanford Medicine. Disability is a vital facet of that diversity and a strength that we must foster, recruit, and embrace. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm David Infuso, President and CEO of Stanford Healthcare. I too want to thank Peter and Ken and the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Inclusion, and Equity for organizing this important conference and for all that you do for Stanford Medicine. The past 2 years have highlighted the systemic problems of health inequity in the United States. The impact of COVID-19 also demonstrated how tenuous access to healthcare can be. Patients with disabilities, a diverse group that has historically been underserved, experienced even greater gaps in care during the pandemic. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 U.S. adults has a disability. This population faces higher rates of preventable chronic conditions. They are more likely to have unmet health needs. They are less likely to have access to preventative care. COVID-19 presented additional challenges. People across the nation isolated at home. They signed on to telehealth visits, and they drove through mass testing and vaccination sites. While necessary, this rapid pivot in care was difficult for people with disabilities. As we look to the future, we must make healthcare more accessible and equitable for patients with disabilities. This cannot be done without the leadership and guidance of those in the disability community. Stanford Medicine is fortunate to have skilled, compassionate healthcare providers with disabilities, and these providers have distinctive ways to connect with patients emotionally and with humanity. They proactively identify challenges like those that I've mentioned and offer advice and solutions. The experiences and perspectives of clinicians with disabilities make us better at what we do. Stanford Medicine and our patients deeply value your unique skills and insights. It is incumbent on us to do more than just support our clinicians, staff, and students with disabilities who do this important work. We must better train our entire enterprise to expertly care for patients with disabilities. The National Institute of Healthcare Management reports that just 4 in 10 doctors say they are very confident that they can provide the same quality of care to patients with disabilities. Improving that takes a systemic effort, and events like this one do a great deal to raise awareness, share best practices, and move us forward to a more inclusive future in patient care. I want to extend my gratitude for those joining us today and your commitment and advocacy. Thank you all.
Good morning. I'm Paul King, President and CEO of Stanford Children's Health, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to join you today. I want to begin by stating unequivocally that we believe that disability is not a problem to be solved. It's a trait to be valued. It's a characteristic to be included, recruited, and supported. I'm proud of the high-quality care we provide for pediatric disability and developmental conditions, but we recognize the staggering amount of unmet need that exists among children with disabilities across the nation and in the communities we serve. Recent data show that an estimated 7 million children, or 14% of all U.S. students, have a disability. The pandemic's toll has been devastating on this group. For many of these kids, the school system provided not just structure, but also the therapies, specialized instruction, and community that enabled them to thrive. When the virus forced schools to close, these students were cut off from that vital support. It's worth noting that when many districts reopened, children with disabilities were usually among the first welcomed back. I'm excited about the potential for Stanford Medicine's new Office of Child Health Equity, which was launched last year to address issues affecting children with disabilities and to eliminate health disparities. Through research, education, community engagement, and advocacy, the office aims to reduce health disparities for all children, including those with disabilities. The work of this office, and so many other programs across Stanford Medicine, is building toward a future where children with disabilities can thrive. I hope that today's sessions inspire all of us to consider our roles in shaping that future. I'll close by thanking the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Inclusion, and Equity for the tremendous work you do to advance Stanford Medicine's diversity mission. Thank you for your time and for your advocacy.
I saw that video on Thursday and I was very energized by their message. Thanks to Brian Conlin for his help creating it. Dean Minor, Mr. Entwistle, Mr. King, and Ms. Chala, your remarks and support are sincerely appreciated. Our first disability conference took place in June of 2020. It was meant to be in person, but then COVID landed and we decided to take it virtual. And unexpectedly, our registrants went from around 100 to over 1,200 people. And this was our first indication that we were meeting an untapped need and that there was a thirst for community. We discussed the benefits of providers with disabilities, cultural humility, mentorship, ethics and disability in COVID, and disability research. The most gratifying piece of feedback from that conference was when somebody told me that before they felt all alone and that the conference changed that for them. They felt like they finally had a community. For our second conference, we challenged ourselves and made major improvements by including more diverse voices and expanding the discussion into mental health. We also offered a session on do-it-yourself advocacy to give people a roadmap to advocate locally. And those first two conferences are available on our website and on YouTube. This year, we want to deepen our discussion to concepts of disability justice, as well as change at governmental policy level, and take on tough questions about transitions of care and stigma and mental health. I know that this will sound familiar to many of you in the audience, whether you can work or study with your disability or you can't. And while rereading the foreword of the Disability Justice Primer, Skin, Tooth, and Bone by Sin's Invalid the other night, a passage reminded me of the work that we do. They described writing the book while living out our cripped out realities. We wrote while on commodes, while using heating pads, while on painkillers, while twisting in pain, while getting IV infusions, while in bed. This is a reality of how disabled people work and live. And this is how many of us created the material and how many of you are receiving it. Be proud of that. There is nothing wrong with being disabled or having a disability. It is completely normal, and we are not beholden to this false binary of disabled versus non-disabled. I also want to acknowledge that medicine can be a very unfriendly place to people with disabilities, both for patients and for those who temporarily occupy the role of healthcare provider. The only way this will change is to bring more disabled people into healthcare and medicine. So, to those of you who may be struggling, it's not for nothing. You're a part of a growing movement to change medicine for the better. So get involved, start a disability group or club at your work or school. Don't wait for permission. If you build it, they will come. And once you're formed, the only direction to go is forward. Usually I save all the thank yous for the end of the day, but our data shows that the audience is largest, at exactly right now. So I wanted to be sure and begin with a note of gratitude to the people who by the end of the day will have once again pulled off this event. It's been 6 months in tireless planning, and I would like to extend a huge thank you to our brilliant event planner, Katie Pontius, the dedicated conference planning committee, and the Smatty board of directors, especially my co-chair, Dr. Ken Sutha, for all of their efforts. And thank you to Zainab Danani for dreaming this conference into reality. Thank you to Lizzie Zudock and MSDCI for their support. Thank you to those in the audience who donated to the conference. And a huge shout out to our sponsors, the Department of Radiology, the Office of Faculty Development and Diversity, the Office of Inclusion, Diversity, and Health Equity, the Diversity and Access Office, and the Departments of Chemical and Systems Biology, Obstetrics and Gynecology, Radiation Oncology, Internal Medicine, the Department of Anesthesiology, Perioperative and Pain Medicine, the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, and Neurosurgery. And finally, to Louis Tan and his team in the control room, thanks so much in advance. Take a deep breath. You've got this. And at this time, I'd like to introduce my co-planner for the conference, Lizzie Zudock. Lizzie is a third-year MDMS student from Houston and currently serves as one of the co-presidents of MSDCI. I'll pass the welcome baton to you, Lizzie.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pulos, for the excellent introduction. As a medical student with a chronic illness, I've been very fearful progressing through my educational journey. There's always been a voice inside my head and frequently heard out loud in the medical community that because of my illness, I'll be ill-suited for medicine because of the long, taxing hours, the need for quote unquote strength and grit, and an overall culture of perfectionism in the field. I, and I'm sure many of you here today, have been a part of conversations where we, as trainees, take pride in our lack of sleep, ability to work for long periods of time without breaks, and ability to withstand degradation by people in positions of power due to perceived ineptitudes. To be clear, these longstanding beliefs in medicine should not be tolerated and undervalue what I and others bring to the table. Thankfully, I've had the support of many mentors throughout this journey to tell me that this is a path that people with disabilities and chronic illnesses can pursue with dignity and equal value. More importantly, however, I've watched and been uplifted by role models in the disability community, like Dr. Pulos and my peers in MSDCI, who thrive and persevere in medicine. They've created an environment of advocacy and acceptance at Stanford, which has made all the difference in my medical training. We are pushing ourselves to become a community where self-care is applauded, disability is valued, and ableism is not tolerated. This conference was founded 2 years ago with the goal of providing much needed education and dialogue surrounding disability in healthcare and medicine. We are so thrilled that you are joining us today, and we are pleased to provide you with engaging, educational, and exciting programming. This conference provides a unique place for disabled people, providers, patient providers, and allies to come together and learn. I hope that this conference can provide you with the tools you need to advocate for and support yourself and your community. Now, I would like to introduce an exciting project that one of my classmates and former MSDCI lead, Lily Reed, is spearheading. There's an increasing interest in the medical humanities. Engagement with medical topics has increased, especially by sharing ideas and culture through social science, philosophy, history, classics, music, but perhaps most notably in art. Things like creative writing, poetry, music, sculpture, painting, drawing, etc. The humanities provide a powerful way for people with marginalized identities to share their own experiences with depth and nuance in meaningful and impactful ways. Images on the slide show a variety of examples of medical humanities, including the book When Breath Becomes Air, Docs with Disabilities podcast, writing workshops, and medical art. Lily and her team are hoping to foster greater engagement of providers with disabilities in medical humanities. We believe that the current publication options for people with disabilities in the humanities is insufficiently representative, and the publishing process may feel unsafe for some people with disabilities to be honest about their experiences. Some of Lily's and her team's ideas include humanities publications for people with disabilities by people with disabilities, and developing a disability-focused issue of a well-known publication curated by people with disabilities. Writer-in-resident and Stanford professor Laura Breitman and Lily have been excited to host writing workshops for healthcare professionals with disabilities to help workshop these stories. If you are interested in the medical humanities and disabilities, please fill out this form that is linked in this slideshow and also available by QR code, which is on the slideshow as well. Finally, I have a few housekeeping notes for the conference. Please use Slido for event discussions, which can be found to the right of your video feed or at slido.com using the event code hashtag SMADIE22. All sessions are being recorded and we will send a link to them in the weeks following the conference. All pre-submitted event materials can be found on the Event Materials tab on the event website. CME is available for today's event, and information on how to obtain credit will be sent in a follow-up email. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thanks everybody for those warm welcomes.